When does a game need a physical release and when does it not? I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. You know all the things to do. That is the existential question we are asking today about Fragrant Story, which I have complete inbox here, and it includes a soundtrack and a downloadable expansion called Papayas Path. Now, this is an infamous game among 3DS collectors because of the fact that it is a game that was released solely to take advantage of being the last physically released 3DS game, which is a title I don't even think Fragrant Story even holds any longer because Shakedown Hawaii came out after this, so it doesn't even get that title anymore. By the way, if you're seeing Bandcamp download codes on these albums, don't worry. I already redeemed those. I mean, I paid for this, I might as well. So, this is a game you could buy for $4, I believe, digitally from the 3DS eShop when that still existed. And if you can find it elsewhere, it probably shouldn't cost you more than that. And if I'm being honest, that's probably what it should cost, period. Even though this is a physical release, it is a very short game. By some accounts, if you play through the main story mode and none of the expansions, you can beat it in 15 minutes. And I don't think a physical boxed edition that you can beat in 15 minutes should be selling for $40, or if you buy a collector's edition, $70, or if you buy a deluxe edition, even more than that. Now, I appreciate the hustle here. There's a lot going on that amuses me, like the fact this is made by Squire Games, Squire obviously being a parody of Square, and Fragrant Story obviously being a parody of Vagrant Story. There's some humor to all of this and some charm to all of this that for a lower priced digital only download, I think a lot of people could get behind that. In fact, Nintendo Life, even before the DLC expansion, gave this game 6 out of 10, and then added a note to their review saying, this was a review written at the time with the game that we had available. However, the expansion pack, which has been added for free, may improve the experience. We can't re-review it, but we appreciate that they added more content to the game. So the people who were saying it only takes 15 minutes to complete, well, that's probably not true anymore, but once those reviews were already out there, it was pretty hard to overcome. Considering the developer has addressed some of that post release, I'm going to give them a pass on it. But what I find most obnoxious about this game, if I'm being perfectly honest about it, is that it's a 3DS game that only uses the top screen. This could have been a GBA game. This could have been a PC game. This doesn't need to be a 3DS game when it only uses one of the two available screens. That's completely defeating the point of making a 3DS game, let alone putting it in a box and selling a retail version of it. If you're gonna make a 3DS game, do something with both screens. If you're gonna make a DS game, do something with both screens. I don't even care if it's just a status update on your party characters on one screen, or if it's just a screen showing you touch controls. It's like a quick guide to how to do certain things. You know, whatever. Use both screens. Make it useful to the player in some way. Other than that, and other than the price, I don't think Fragrant Story is bad. I just think the hype behind it got way ahead of the game, and so in the minds of the people buying it, it overpromised and underdelivered. But if you bought this game digitally and not physically, I think you'd be okay with it, especially if you like tactical role playing games. I've heard this being called a micro SRPG, short for strategy role playing game. And if you like strategy or tactical or turn based role playing games and you want a short, fun experience, then yes, Fragrant Story is good. And it does have voice acting, which is more than you might expect for an indie developed quote unquote micro game. So, once again, giving some credit where it's due here. For $40, no. For under $10, perhaps so. And for the fact that it's the last physical 3DS game, definitely a no. This this is the kind of game where it just goes back to the question I asked at the beginning. Not everything needs to be a physical game. I know that's weird from somebody who collects physical games and who considers himself a hardcore retro enthusiast. But let's just take the Nintendo Wii library for example. There's maybe 2,000 games in total for the Wii, and that's probably just North America. That's not counting the rest of the world. And if we lost 80% of those games, I'm not sure anybody would cry about it because 80% of them are just schlock. They're just games that were thrown together with a quick cash grab in mind. They either got a license for something and schlocked out a bunch of mini games and puzzle games into a collection and called it a Wii game, or they just took mobile phone games and converted them to use a Wiimote and a nunchuck. And I think we can all agree that none of those games are going to be beloved or remembered by future generations. There's a lot of games out there like that, and preservation is important. Let's make one copy of everything and store it in a vault somewhere and make sure we can access it if we need to. But at the same time, not everything ever deserved a physical release. And in an era where people are rushing to get on the bandwagon of making physical games and selling physical games, stop for a moment and ask yourself, how good is this game? How many people are going to want to own a physical copy? And what is a physical copy going to be worth to future generations? And if you can't justify that question with a proper answer, then you don't need to release it physically. Having a digital only game is not necessarily a bad thing. If it doesn't wind up taking up space in a landfill or a pawn shop or somebody's storage box, and it can still be played and people enjoy that experience, then good. Don't waste the time and money and space to create a physical game for something that doesn't need one. That should be my grand summary of Fragrant story. It's a decent experience, but it's one that should have been kept digital only, and one that definitely didn't need to exist on the 3DS platform, even as a digital release. I think if this was only a Steam game or a Nintendo eShop game or a PS5 online storefront game, that would be fine. Don't call it a 3DS game and then make it a single screen game, because then it's really not a 3DS game at all. It's a Game Boy Advance game masquerading as a 3DS game. And you know what? If Fragrant Story had come out for Game Boy Advance back in the day, this conversation would be entirely different. I mean, it's still probably too short for a Game Boy Advance game, but at least then it would have been contemporary to the era of stuff like Final Fantasy Tactics, where it would have fit in a lot better. And if it was released as the Papyrus Path expansion along with the original Fragrant Story, it might be long enough to justify existing as a GBA game. I'm Mr. MegaManFan, and as always, thank you for watching.